It's Sunday. It's Backlash Day. It's the day of the greatest, or potentially the greatest wrestling match ever. Hope everyone is doing well. Looking forward to Backlash this evening. Just wanted to talk about the greatest wrestling match ever between Randy Orton and Edge coming up tonight. I thought this would be a bit of a preview for the match. We have done a Backlash preview and predictions video that's on the channel. I'll put a link in the description box to that, so go watch that if you would like. We've also done a bit of a preview at WrestleNews365.com. But yeah, I wanted to do a bit of a deeper dive into the match between Edge and Randy Orton tonight. It's very strange. I think, to be honest, the more I think about it, it's almost paid off, hasn't it? The tagline, the greatest wrestling match ever. The tagline is so ridiculous and so over the top that, for better or for worse, it's got people talking, hasn't it? And maybe that was WWE's intention from the start. There's been so much talk about this match, and there's been so much talk about the intentions, the original plans, the outcome, what it's going to look like. And there's so much to talk about, and I'm sure this is going to be one of those matches. I've just literally finished watching the latest episode of The Undertaker, The Last Ride on the network. Fantastic, as always. Go and watch it. But this match, the greatest wrestling match ever, feels like there's going to be a documentary of the making here. I would be stunned if there wasn't documentary crews following them around, socially distanced, of course, at the moment, and documenting this whole process, because it's such a strange process and a strange time that's going on at the moment. By all accounts, and I touched on this in yesterday's video, by all accounts, Randy Orton Edge was scheduled for SummerSlam. Of course, they had the first match at WrestleMania, the last man standing match, the, how long was it, 40-minute match, which certainly polarized the viewers, didn't it? It was a long match. It was very long. I was one of the people in the camp of I enjoyed it. I think I just enjoyed it so much, just seeing Edge back working a match, seeing Edge in a one-on-one match, seeing him, regardless of, you know, it being in an empty arena and not having the pomp and circumstance of a WrestleMania. I enjoyed seeing Edge back in the ring, and maybe that did kind of blind me when it comes to that match at WrestleMania, but I enjoyed it. I thought some of the spots were really creative. The elbow drop hanging from the ceiling in the boardroom, all of that stuff, the Randy Orton sneaking up from behind, I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. It was long. It was very long, and that was the major criticism of it. It was too long, and just that kind of length wasn't warranted and hurt the match, and I do agree to a point there. But by all accounts, it was the first match of what was scheduled to be many. Now, this rematch was scheduled for SummerSlam. It was going to be Edge versus Randy Orton at SummerSlam. But then, I'm assuming when this was planned for SummerSlam, I'm assuming that they were still, this was during the pandemic still, so they were still planning. I'm guessing they were hoping way back in April that when we got to August, we were going to have fans back in the arenas and SummerSlam could potentially take place from Boston. Those aims or suggestions would have been incredibly naive from WWE, to be honest, because there was no chance in how, see what I did there, no chance in how that SummerSlam was going to take place from Boston, or that it was going to have an arena, a sold-out arena full of people. That's not going to happen. But the plan was to have Randy Orton versus Edge take place in Boston, or take place at SummerSlam. But then, due to the pandemic, due to the times that we are living in at the moment, plans change, pal. And one of those plans changing was Edge and Randy Orton. So they decided to bump up that match and have it at Backlash. And the tagline, they were then told, was that it was going to be billed as potentially the greatest wrestling match ever. And by all accounts, both Randy Orton and Edge, when this was pitched to them by Paul Heyman and Vince McMahon, they both thought this was a rib. And can you blame them? I mean, the tagline, the greatest wrestling match ever, seems like a giant rib, doesn't it? I mean, how can you live up to that? You know, you talk about putting pressure on yourself, and you talk about, you know, setting yourself high expectations, and fans having high expectations going into the match. But this is setting expectations to a level where it's just unachievable and it's unattainable. And I do think it hurts the match, because people are kind of looking at it now a bit like it's a car crash, aren't they? You know, you can't look away. because it's obvious. It's obvious coming out of tonight's match. Tonight's match could be the best match on the show. It could be the best match that Randy Orton and Edge have ever had against each other. And it could be, the best match Edge and Randy Orton have ever had. But it's still not going to be the greatest wrestling match ever. For several reasons. One being, the greatest wrestling match ever is the most subjective question in professional wrestling, or is up there as one of the most subjective opinions in professional wrestling. So it's never going to be universally called the greatest wrestling match ever. Two, if you've always had that friend, right, who goes, have you seen this TV show? And you go, no, I haven't seen this TV show. And they go, it's the greatest TV show I've ever seen, or it's the greatest thing I've ever seen. I don't know about you. This might just be me personally. But if someone tells me something prior, it's the greatest thing I've ever seen, immediately I go, we'll see about that. We'll see about that. And when it comes to a company or a promotion telling you this is going to be the greatest thing you've ever seen or the greatest wrestling match ever, again, my immediate reaction is, we will see about that. And it sets your expectations really high. You go, okay, I want this to be the greatest thing I've ever seen. And without a shadow of a doubt, for me, I can't even answer the question, what is the greatest wrestling match ever? Because I start listing off, 4 or 5 matches. But if I think of one off the top of my head, you go, okay, Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, for WrestleMania 25, is that the best wrestling match ever? That might not even be the best wrestling match ever. That's the best WrestleMania match ever. But is that the best wrestling match ever? Even that's up to discussion. And I don't think tonight's match is going to be as good as that match. It just isn't, for several reasons. One being that you don't have a sold out stadium full of people to create the atmosphere and the drama of that match. You don't have Jim Ross on commentary going crazy. Everything. You don't have the WrestleMania event. You don't have everything. So it's just not going to happen. However, as I mentioned at the start of this video, I think that if WWE was looking at it purely from the sense of, if we push and promote the hell out of this, saying it's going to be the greatest thing ever, then people are going to be talking about it, and people, because of the, the car crash look, I can't look away, they're going to want to see it, because they've booked themselves so much into a corner with this tagline. People are going, they must have something. They must have something. They must have something up their sleeve, or they must be doing something different, because calling it the greatest wrestling match ever, putting that amount of pressure on yourself, whatever, you have to have something in the bag there. You have to have something in the bag there. Unless they are willing, they're going, look, what matters is people are going to watch it. If people watch it and they talk about it, that's what we're happy with. We don't care about the quality. We don't care that it won't live up to expectations. And maybe that's what they're doing. Am I looking forward to it tonight? You know what? Yeah, I am. Because not necessarily because I think it's going to be the greatest match ever. Not necessarily because I'm really looking forward to Backlash. Not because I think it's going to be an amazing match. Purely, I'm looking forward to it out of a sort of a morbid curiosity, if anything, of like, what are they going to do? Because they must have something, right? They've got to have something. They can't use this tagline and not have something. Now, it's already been taped. The rest of the card is going to be live, but this is the only match that's been taped, which basically means that it's going to be a cinematic style match. And so far, the cinematic style matches that they've had, whether it be the Boneyard match at WrestleMania, whether it be the Firefly Funhouse, whether it be the corporate Money in the Bank matches, whether it be the Backlot Brawl, or the Tommaso Ciampa versus Johnny Gargano match, they've been pretty good. Now, the 2 NXT matches, they left a lot for me to be desired. I thought the Backlot Brawl last weekend wasn't shot very well. I thought too many cutaways, too many weird camera angles. It wasn't lit the best. I think that's probably one of the worst cinematic matches that they've done. But then you look at the corporate Money in the Bank match, the Firefly Funhouse match, and then, of course, the Boneyard match, which is my favourite of them all. They've been doing a pretty good job with this cinematic style wrestling, creating these mini movies, and I think, again, it confuses me slightly, because I don't think any cinematic wrestling match can be the greatest match ever, because you're going to have that pocket of people and that group of people that are saying that these aren't really wrestling matches, these are films, these are movies. For me, I don't sit in that group. I think a wrestling match is a wrestling match, however you present it. I bet you had when you first started having hardcore matches, or you first started having ladder matches or cage matches or any type of gimmick match. They go, that's not a wrestling match. A wrestling match is just this, this, and this. Wrestling evolves, time evolves, the business evolves, presentations evolve, and that's just dealing with the circumstances that we're in right now. So I think a cinematic match could absolutely be the greatest wrestling match ever. I think, though, a lot of people will disagree with that. For instance, the Boneyard match this past year at WrestleMania. I thought it was the best match of WrestleMania that entire weekend. It's one of my favourite WrestleMania matches ever, to be honest, because it was so different and it was so unique and it was such a moment. Even though, was it really a match? Not really, but I loved it still. I loved it still. Again, that's evolving taste, that's evolving opinion, that's just lots of things changing in the presentation of professional wrestling. But again, going back to the original point, it probably does change people's perception of what a wrestling match is, and therefore can the greatest wrestling match ever be a cinematic style match? I don't know. I think given that it's going to be shot and presented in a cinematic style, we're going to see something pretty unique and pretty dramatic, I think. I think their whole tagline of the greatest wrestling match ever and it being shot cinematically is certainly going to just have a different presentation. I think there's going to be a lot of drama in there, and I think there might be quite a lot of dialogue. I think this could be, look, Edge is quite a well-trained actor now. He's done a lot of acting work. He's just actually in a film that's to be released or has been released with Kelsey Grammer in it. So congratulations, Edge. You know, Kelsey Grammer, Good Morning Seattle. So we know his acting chops. We know the promos recently between Edge and Randy Orton have been world class. I mentioned this on yesterday's video and I'll say it here again. I would have preferred they just built this whole feud on the doubt of if Edge can actually wrestle a wrestling match again and keep up to the level of someone like Randy Orton. Edge hasn't had a standard wrestling match in 9 years. That whole doubt of, can I still do this? Am I still as good as I once was? And Randy Orton poking that doubt in him, and Edge cutting the promos about his uncertainty and having the promos like you had on Raw Monday of Christian saying, you know, could you ever do this match in your prime? Could you ever beat Randy Orton in your prime? We don't know. All of that stuff I think would be much more compelling and been much better television. But looking at it from a promotional point of view, would it have got as many people talking as having the tagline, the greatest wrestling match ever? I don't think it would. I don't think it would have got so many people as hyped for this main event. And again, hype, I don't even know if hype's the right word. I think, yeah, morbidly curious are the right words there. I think more people are talking about this event and this match because of that tagline, which means that it did his job. Absolutely. And I think it does add stakes to it. I think saying that a match could potentially be the greatest wrestling match ever and having a screwy finish, having Randy Orton cheat to win or having it marred by controversy does add a lot to the storytelling there. If Randy Orton cheats to win or Randy Orton does something dastardly and heelish, then you could say, Randy Orton, you spoiled what could have been the greatest wrestling match ever. We were making history. We were cementing our legacies. We were having the greatest wrestling match ever, and you had to ruin it. You had to cheat to win. All the doubt that I have in my ability is gone because I know I was beating you in what was the greatest wrestling match ever, and you ruined it. How dare you? How dare you try and ruin and take this moment from all of us? That kind of storyline could be very, very compelling and very, very interesting to see. So there's definitely ways they can go of it and definitely ways they can get out of it and not set themselves straight up for failure. But I worry that's what they've done. I do worry that's what they've done with it. I'm sure two absolute pros and professionals and two of the best WWE superstars of all time in Edge and Randy Orton have set themselves lofty goals and lofty ambitions to try and live up to this tagline. It definitely is a tagline you can only use once, though. You know, it's never ever a tagline they can use ever again, I don't think. You know, if in a year's time they say, oh, this could potentially be the greatest wrestling match ever, or if they ever have a rematch, like, put it this way, if Randy Orton wins, and it's 1-1, right? Because Edge won at WrestleMania last man standing match. Now Randy Orton beats Edge at Backlash. They're going to have a final match, right, to settle the score. Why wouldn't that be the greatest wrestling match ever? I guess because if it was in a gimmick style match, then it wouldn't be technically a wrestling match. But you know what I mean. It's the once in a lifetime principle, isn't it? The Rock faces John Cena at WrestleMania 28, once in a lifetime. We're never going to see it again, apart from the following year when we have the rematch. So twice in a lifetime. And I suppose Edge and Randy Orton can never face each other again after tonight, because then it will be the greatest wrestling match ever once again. Every time they compete, it's the greatest wrestling match ever. And if you're Edge and Randy Orton, why bother competing after tonight, right? Because you're never going to have as good a match. You're never going to have the greatest wrestling match ever. And what does this say? If this is potentially the greatest wrestling match ever, what does it say about the rest of the card or the rest of any other matches WWE ever puts on now? The rest of the card, by by default with this tagline, isn't going to be as good as the main event. The matches aren't going to be as good as the main event, because the main event's the greatest wrestling match ever. All the other matches are going to be crap. There's no reason to watch. Is Raw going to have the greatest wrestling match ever tomorrow night? No. It's going to be a Backlash. Why ever bother watching WWE after this? We've already seen the greatest wrestling match ever. It was at Backlash. It was the main event at Backlash. Why bother? You know, people are talking about WrestleMania next year, or even SummerSlam in August. Don't bother watching SummerSlam in August. The greatest wrestling match ever is at Backlash tonight. Don't bother watching WrestleMania next year. The greatest wrestling match ever, you'll never see it, because it'll be at Backlash tonight, right? You know I'm probably looking into it, and I am being sarcastic there, and I am joking, but you know what I mean. When you really look into the logical sense of this tagline, it's ridiculous. It's been a recent WWE thing now, hasn't it? The whole tagline business. Now, I mentioned there they did it before with the whole once in a lifetime thing, but ever since the pandemic era of WWE, they have loved a tagline. If they can't get people in the arenas and they want to get people to watch, they will just put a tagline on an event and push it to the moon and back, or violently shove it down your throats in every advert, every promo, every announcing spot. You will hear it. Okay, WrestleMania, too big for one night, right? How many times did we hear that in March and April? WrestleMania, too big for one night. How many Money in the Bank? Is the risk worth the reward? Is the risk worth the reward? How many times did we hear that in May and April? Is the risk worth the reward for Money in the Bank? And now we're in, June and May. We've heard possibly or potentially the greatest wrestling match ever. That's all we've heard on, especially Raw, but we've heard it on SmackDown as well. So WWE is loving these taglines in this pandemic era. I have no doubt when it gets to Extreme Rules, which is the next pay-per-view, we will get a weird tagline for that one. SummerSlam, we will get a weird tagline for that one. As a promotional tool, it's not bad. I mean, even though it's so annoying, and I'd rather them not say it all the time, it does get it into your head, and you're morbidly curious, like I said, that can they live up to this? The answer usually is no, because by the end of it, you're sick of it. I'm so glad I don't have to hear anymore, too big for one night, WrestleMania, too big for one night. I'm so glad I don't have to hear Michael Cole say, is the risk worth the reward? Or Tom Phillips say, is the risk worth the reward? All over again. But, those are the last two pay-per-views. Those were now a couple of months ago. WrestleMania was back in April. It's now June, and I can still name the tagline. So what does that say? It says that it works. I don't know. I'm looking forward to tonight. It'll certainly be interesting. We'll be doing reviews and reactions and all of that good stuff on YouTube, on social media, at our website, wrestlenews365.com. Be sure to follow all of it, and I hope you enjoyed Backlash. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak with you again very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.